Three teams in the NFC currently have 9-3 records, including the Seattle Seahawks, who hope to have put themselves in the driver's seat in the NFC. We're going to be breaking it all down here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s listening in, whether you're down in Orlando, Florida, or you're tuning in from Portland, Oregon. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, and the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. The Seahawks sitting atop the NFC West and the NFC standings. It's a three-way tie. Where do the Seahawks sit in the top tier of teams in the conference as we draw closer to the playoffs? We're going to revisit that essential question, and then it's Matchup Wednesday. We'll be diving into all the key matchups to watch when the Seahawks battle the Atlanta Falcons this weekend in a Week 14 matchup. All that coming your way courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be on the right side of the action this season, the NFL, visit FanDuel.com and place your live bets all season long. Now for your lead story here on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. There's a big question that we have tackled a couple of times already this year. Before the season started, do the Seahawks belong in the discussion as one of the top teams in the NFC? We revisited about a month ago, a month and change, when the Seahawks are coming out of that game against the Washington Commanders that they put on a show in prime time. Now we can truly pose this question, though, with a statistical lens. The Seattle Seahawks tied for not only first place in the NFC West, but the NFC, Rob. You've got three teams, the Bears, the Rams, and the Seahawks, get the 49ers just behind them at 9-4, telling you the strength of this NFC West division. But I think now we can truly ask that question with 5 games left. Have the Seahawks vaulted themselves into the driver's seat, the front runner in this conference? Or is it still about the Rams or, heck, the Bears, the way they've been playing the last 2 months? Where the Seahawks fit into this big picture in a conference that's got plenty of talented teams that are below those top 3 as well. But looking at where the Seahawks fit in this discussion, we're looking at who really is the favorite right now in the NFC.
Well, for my money, Corbin, the favorite remains the Los Angeles Rams. I just think that, you just look at the fact that they have done it before. They have the quarterback that is as proven as it gets in Matthew Stafford, of course. That said, I think that the Seahawks have the advantage in terms of their health. Some exciting news just today with Mike McDonald acknowledging that Julian Love and Jaron Reed, Derek Young are all set to return to the practice field. So that means that they could be back on the actual playing field for the Seahawks as soon as this week, and certainly will be available to Seattle within the next 3 weeks. And then you can make an argument for the Chicago Bears. They are the hottest team among the group. So again, for my money, I would say the Los Angeles Rams at this point. Obviously, they had the one matchup against the Seahawks where, Seattle was, arguably the better team. But at the same time, the victory is at the Los Angeles Rams. So I do have to say they're in the driver's seat, but I think Seattle is right there in the passenger seat, about ready to kick the Rams out the door and be able to take over the steering wheel.
I think this all boils down to the NFC West, because even with the injuries that the 49ers have had, they're half a game behind the Rams and the Seahawks, and they're off this week. They finally have their bye week. They get a chance to maybe get a little bit healthier. They're not going to get Nick Bosa back this season. They've got a couple other big-name players that are out, but San Francisco just keeps finding ways to win it. It feels like whoever wins that division is going to be the team that is in the driver's seat. And Chicago can sit there and say, but nobody's been hotter than us the last couple months. And that's true. I still have some reservations about whether that team is a legitimate contender or not, though. And that's based on watching a few of their games where, like, when they beat the Giants a few weeks ago, the New York Giants, I don't know how many times this year they're going to give away a game in the fourth quarter. They've done it like half their games. Chicago's had a number of games where they've had a lot of really good fortune. I have not seen a team, at least on film, that looks to me like a Super Bowl contender. The record says that they're going to be in the hunt there. They've still got to fend Green Bay off. I still think Green Bay is going to win that division. At some point, the Packers are going to start playing like we expect. I mean, they're 8-3-1. It's not like the Green Bay Packers are, a bad football team. But they've had some disappointing defeats this year. I still think Green Bay is the more dangerous team there. But NFC West, whoever escapes that division, if they haven't beaten each other up so bad that all three teams are dealing with injuries, whoever exits that division is going to be the one that I think is going to be the favorite. And look, Philadelphia just doesn't look like the same team as last year. Jalen Hurts is taking a step back. They can't run the ball near as effectively as they did a year ago. Their defense is great. Tampa Bay, if they had healthy players, they do get Mike Evans back here in the next few weeks. Maybe Tampa Bay still ends up playing into it. There's a lot of teams we can look at, but we are now at the point, Rob, that I think you just got to start looking at the schedule here. It's not like there's 9 or 10 games left. We're looking at 5 weeks left in the season. The Bears, Rams, and Seahawks have all had their bye weeks, so they're going to be playing in all 5 of these weeks. And I think you got to do a little comparative analysis. And this is as tough as trying to decide between 3-9 and 3 teams that have the same winning percentage. When you look at who these teams are playing, the Bears have 2 games against the Packers in the next 3 weeks. That is going to decide who wins the NFC North, most likely. They've got to play Cleveland, who's got a couple good wins, even though they got a bad record this year. They already beat Green Bay this season. They have to play at Santa Clara against the 49ers. And then they play the Lions, who could still play into the division title picture as well. That is not an easy slate. The Rams, they probably got the easiest setup here when you're looking at records, but the Cardinals always give the Rams trouble. They always have. And those are the easy games. They get the Lions, Seahawks, and even playing at Atlanta late in the season is a game, Seattle's got to try to win this weekend there. I think all 3 of these teams have pretty equally challenging schedules from the perspective of what teams are doing now. And we'll see where Indianapolis is at with Daniel Jones' health. He's trying to play through a fractured fibula. Who knows where he's going to be at here in a couple weeks when they visit the Seahawks at Lumen Field. But it feels like it is like throwing a dart, trying to figure out who is going to have the best record of these 3 teams if you're just basing it on their upcoming records for the rest of the season, because I don't think any of them have easy schedules.
Well, I think that the Rams have an easier schedule. I don't think that there is such a thing as an easy schedule in the NFL at this point, when, of course, the Rams are, were the division champs a year ago. And so they were playing that first place schedule. And so not only are they, playing that first place schedule, they're also playing some quality teams on the road, obviously at Seattle, as you mentioned, at Atlanta. And then the Cardinals have given them some troubles. But at the same time, this is a Cardinals team, of course, that has Jacoby Brissett at this point. This is a Falcons team that is going to be, as the Seahawks are obviously going to be dealing with, Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position rather than Michael Penix. So I definitely think that the Rams have the easier schedule. I think that Seattle and Chicago have more difficult schedules. But again, I do think that the Rams, when it comes to their schedule, when it comes to the experience, the quarterback experience of the head coach, I think you have to give, to me, they are the incumbents. And so you have to kind of give them the tip of the cap. That said, as we talked about, I think that Seattle is the better team, frankly, than the Los Angeles Rams. I can't wait to see that showdown Thursday Night Football at Lumen Field, where Seattle gets that opportunity to push aside the Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams back into the street, like we talked about, and then seize control in the driver's seat.
Look, everything's in front of the Seahawks to control their own destiny here. Like, you beat the Rams, you finish the season off with a win against the 49ers, and you take care of business in 2 of the other 3 games. I think you got a really good chance to be the NFC West champion. You might be the 13-4 team that gets the number 1 seed in the conference. Now you've got home field running throughout the playoffs at Lumen Field, which is starting to get its bite back a little bit. It feels like the Seahawks have been playing better football in front of their home fans the last 3 or 4 games that they've played there. So maybe they finally have turned the corner there. They can win on the road, but this is a situation where you want to win the NFC West, you got to go beat your foes. And they've got both the teams that are chasing there, or in the Rams case, that are equal with them. You've got that Thursday night game in front of your home fans against the Rams, that you can get into first place. You've got a matchup at the end of the season against the 49ers that could be deciding the division championship. I mean, at this point, we have to stop counting the 49ers out. They keep finding ways to do it. So this is going to be as exciting of a finish as it boils down to in the NFL, not just in the division, but the possibility whoever wins this division could have a bye potentially going into the playoffs. When we come back, it's Matchup Wednesday. We're going to be diving into all the key matchups. Seahawks on offense against the Atlanta Falcons. Defense coming up this Sunday in Week 14 action. Don't go away. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup, headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves food, this is a great gift. Endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter by using the promo code Locked On at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code Locked On. This deal is exclusive to our listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. The holidays are here, and this time of year, I'm not stressing about what to wear because I'll be wearing my Doers. Doers denim and lifestyle apparel is engineered for movement and versatility, whether I'm on the go traveling, lounging at home, or going to a nice dinner party. If you don't have your own Doers yet, now is the time. I've been recommending Doer to all of my friends and family. They're the best jeans that I have ever had. You've got Cool Max fabrics that keep me warm but don't overheat. The fabric is so stretchy, I forget I'm even wearing jeans. Doer invented the original performance denim, and they give the best of both worlds. You get the classic jeanswear style with the comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It's time for you to experience the comfort of Doer. I know you'll love these. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Go to doer.com/LockedOnSeattle. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's shop DUER.com/LockedOnSeattle for 15% off. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks looking to stay hot, stay atop the NFC and the NFC West. They got a lengthy road trip coming up to Atlanta to face the 4-8 Falcons. As we talked about yesterday, it's certainly been a disappointing season in Hot Atlanta. They've struggled offensively. The defense has been up and down. They've had injuries, including Michael Penix, their starting quarterback, going down with a knee injury that's going to knock him out for the remainder of the season. Unfortunately, durability dating back to college has been a big issue for Penix. So Kirk Cousins is the man under center. He's back in the saddle, a guy that's won a lot of football games, has thrown a lot of touchdowns in this league. But Atlanta hasn't exactly soared with him back in the quarterback spot. Let's get to some of the key matchups to watch. And as we love to do, we're going to start with the Seahawks on offense going up against the Falcons defense. And I think first and foremost, when you look at this game, and it's such a pivot from the Atlanta Falcons the last 4 or 5 years. They have been one of the perpetually worst pass rushing teams in the National Football League. But Rob, they've invested a lot of high draft picks, including 2 first-round picks this year on pass rushers. They've went out and made some moves in free agency. They have an aggressive blitzing defense that Raheem Morris loves to deploy. A little different than the one the Seahawks saw last week from Brian Flores, but similar in the sense you're going to see a lot of extra pressure coming from them schematically. To me, it boils down to the tackles, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas going up against the likes of Jalen Walker and Pierce and some of the other edge rushers that the Falcons can throw at you rotating in. They've got a lot of depth and they've got a lot of explosiveness at that position. And that's going to be key, keeping them under wraps to allow Sam Darnold time to get the football out of his hands and hopefully get that passing game back rolling after a off week against the Vikings a week ago.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. This is a Falcons team here that obviously with a 4-8 record, there's going to be a lot of Seahawks fans out there that's going to dismiss any possibility that the Falcons are going to give the Seahawks any type of trouble. And after the victory over the Minnesota Vikings and obviously the shutout victory, people are feeling pretty good about things. But you don't have to have too strong of a memory to think back in that first half, how frustrating it was and how aggressive Minnesota was in blitzing Sam Darnold and all of the different mistakes that Seattle's offensive line and Darnold himself were making. And I think that there are an awful lot of similarities between Raheem Morris, Jeff Ulbrich as the defensive coordinator, and the talented front that the Falcons have as to what the Vikings had a week ago that gave Seattle trouble. And that, of course, was at Lumen Field. And this, of course, is going to be in Atlanta. And so this is a spooky matchup. And you mentioned the two tackles, Charles Cross, left tackle, Abe Lucas at the right tackle spot. And a couple of those sacks, Seattle gave up 4 against the Vikings a week ago. A couple of them came off the right side where Abe Lucas was working in conjunction with the tight ends. And so I do think that is an especially intriguing matchup. As you mentioned, the Falcons invested the 2 first-round picks in pass rushers. Jalen Walker is a guy that typically lines up on the right side, go up against Charles Cross, but on the left side, go up against the right tackle. They have James Pierce, who is 6'4", 245 to 250 pounds, and he is just grease lightning off of the edge. And then they have a longtime Seahawk killer in Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd out there, and his long arm power has always been something that has given offensive tackles problems. So I often use that Baskin-Robbins kind of pick your flavor. That's where I think that the Falcons have a great deal of versatility in how they're going to be able to match up against Seattle's offensive tackles. And then in the interior, Brandon Dorlus is the rookie that actually leads the Falcons with 6 sacks. This is the only team in the NFC that has more sacks than the Seahawks. They have 41 sacks at this point. They also have some linebackers who are very good at blitzing. So again, I think that this is a critical matchup for Seattle. Would not be surprised at all if the Falcons are able to get some real pressure on Sam Darnold and make this game a little bit more nerve-wracking for Seahawks fans than they might expect given the Falcons' record at this point.
You mentioned the pass rushing ability of the off-ball linebackers. It's a perfect segue into the second pivotal position battle that I'm going to be watching when the Seahawks are on offense. I know that Raheem Morris does not run the same scheme as what Brian Flores does. They do things differently. There are some similarities with the way they deploy their defenses, but both these teams have had their share of issues with teams that have been able to punch them in the mouth and physically impose their will, particularly when they can get blockers up at the second level. There's been some tackling issues. So I know that, Caden Ellis is a guy that you've been following for a long time with his Pacific Northwest ties. Has great pass rushing ability. Run defense has not been his forte necessarily in the NFL, though. He's a guy, if you can get blockers up to him, you can get physical, he can have some issues. And then my favorite name in the entire NFL, Divine Diablo at the other spot. There's some physicality to his game. There's also a lot of missed tackles in his game. That's one of the reasons the Raiders didn't bring him back in free agency. There's some sporadicness to his game. And that's particularly against the run. And I think he's a guy that you can exploit with your running backs in the passing game too. He's had some issues with that throughout his career. So I think this is one, look, if you're trying to get the ball out and you are trying to prevent those edge rushers from teeing off, or you're wanting to prevent those inside linebackers from teeing off, get the football to the middle of the field and run the football. Lean on that ground game. Atlanta's had their share of issues at times this year, and particularly with those linebackers. I think that's a matchup advantage for the Seattle Seahawks in this game.
I agree with you. I think that this is, and it's also a way to try and silence that crowd as well. If you give them a belief, then the Atlanta Falcons crowd is one that is very loyal, is very passionate. And so again, if you give them a reason to believe, then they will get pretty damn vocal as the game goes on. So you got to hit Atlanta in the mouth in this particular football game. While they are very effective in rushing the passer, they do allow some gaps in the middle that Seattle's running backs should be able to exploit. This could be the game that we finally see a big Kenneth Walker run. We see Zach Charbonnet perhaps take over and really put some bodies on the ground, just because of the fact that, look, I am a big Caden Ellis fan. Evaluating him at the University of Idaho was my first real opportunity as a scout for the BC Lions, and he was terrific. And I'm not been at all surprised at the success that he's had in the NFL. But as you said, Corbin, that's one of the things in which he can struggle with is he's very fast, but at the same time, he isn't always a guy that is able to shed blocks, the point of attack, and be able to make the tackles at the line of scrimmage consistently. And certainly with Divine Diablo, he was a safety at Virginia Tech. And he is still an undersized linebacker and one who does struggle a little bit with missed tackles. The Falcons have good safeties, and they are going to be willing to come aggressively and run support, but that might create some passing opportunities downfield for the Seattle to take advantage of as well.
And last but not least, we got to go to the outside. And Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be looking to bounce back from the first quiet game he had this entire season, just 23 receiving yards. And A.J. Terrell, the number one corner for the Falcons, what a yo-yo of a career he's had. He's had a couple years. He's looked like an all-pro. He's had a couple years where they've talked about benching him. It has been such an up and down career for him since coming out of Clemson, first-round pick, a guy that's got all kinds of talent. But he has historically struggled. It hasn't mattered who's played quarterback for the Seahawks. Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, they have lit him up in the past. And going up against JSN, that's going to be the marquee matchup on the outside. Rashid Shaheed's got a history of lighting these guys up too from being in the NFC South. Maybe this is the game that we see Shaheed get after it because, look, Mike Hughes has ended up having a solid career, but he's never lived up to his draft pedigree. And D. Alford in the slot, he slid inside. He is a guy that has been exploited a lot in that role that the Seahawks have had a lot of success against over the years as well. It just feels like the Seahawks have the goods for this to be a week where Minnesota was able to take it away some last week with their pass rush. If Seattle can neutralize that some and give Sam Darnold a chance to get the ball to his receivers, if A.J. Terrell's on his A game, maybe that makes things a little different. But this is a secondary that's been ripe for giving up big play this year.
Yeah, and as I said, I do think that Seattle is going to try and run the ball a lot, and that's going to force those safeties, I think, to come up. And if that happens, I do think this is the game that Rashid Shaheed is able to get his first touchdown with the Seahawks. Obviously, the familiarity as a former New Orleans Saint going up against the Atlanta Falcons all these years. You are inside on that turf, and I think that his speed is going to play a role in this game. Mike Hughes, as you said, is a good player. He's also a guy who is a 4.5 guy when he came out of college. And I don't know that he's even in the low 4.5s anymore. Now, it's critical that Seattle gives Sam Darnold enough time to be able to get the ball to Rashid Shaheed. But I do think this is the game where you might see a big play over the top or several passes or their short to intermediate area, trying to get Rashid one-on-one on the outside. Obviously, JSN is still the straw that stirs the drink in Seattle's passing attack, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's another receiver who winds up getting a touchdown catch or two in this particular game that evens out the distribution of the football.
When we come back, we got the Seahawks defense going up against the Fighting Kirk Cousinses. That'll be coming up next here on our Matchup Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. The NBA is officially rolling full throttle. There's no better place to get into the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the first or second quarter of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot and a bigger payout. It keeps every game thrilling, especially when your team's making that late push in the fourth quarter. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Matchup Wednesday here on Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. And for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. Our good buddies, Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, as well as Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars. They dish out all the insight, analysis, and humor that you're looking for a top-of-the-line NFL podcast. 2 days a week, that's Locked On NFL. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. So make sure to make Locked On NFL your second listen. It's Matchup Wednesday, and as we do every week this time of the week, we are going to dive into the key matchups to watch when the Seahawks hit the road and travel down to Atlanta to face the Falcons. It's time to shift to the defense for Mike McDonald. They're coming off their first shutout of the season against the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to be looking to keep that momentum going against a Falcons offense that, even though they're missing their starting quarterback, it's a much different situation than Max Brosmer making his debut as a starter last week. Kirk Cousins has won a lot of games. He's led teams to the playoffs. He's thrown a lot of touchdowns in the NFL. Much different situation, and he's got plenty of weapons at his disposal. We've got to just start this discussion, though, for Seattle. As great as their linebackers are playing, this is going to be one of the biggest challenges that they've had this entire season when you have to deal with the freak that is Bijan Robinson and one of the most underrated running backs in the NFL, formerly of BYU, Tyler Algier. This 1-2 punch, man, where would the Falcons be if they didn't have those two guys? Because the games they have won this year, a big reason for that has been the thunder and lightning package that Robinson and Algier provide, and they're both capable pass catchers as well. It puts a lot of strain on opposing linebackers. Ernest Jones, Drake Thomas, they're going to have to be playing on their A game, take what they did last week and up it an ante or two, because those guys are going to test them both in the run game and in the passing game.
Quite possibly the biggest test that Seattle's linebackers have faced all season long in terms of the running backs that they're going to be facing here. I think that there's an awful lot of Seahawks fans out there that see this record for the Atlanta Falcons at 4-8 and think, this is going to be easy. And it's the Seattle's run defense has been so darn good that I understand that sentiment. But Bijan Robinson, his lateral agility, his burst, there's only so many running backs that I would literally pay to watch play. Maybe a healthy and a motivated Saquon Barkley, to me, is one of those guys. But certainly Bijan Robinson is somebody that can just absolutely drop your jaw as a talent evaluation standpoint. I mean, the guy just can do just about anything on the football field. And I just love the way that Atlanta has started to utilize him more as a receiver out of the backfield. So again, I think that this is a fascinating matchup for the Seahawks. Look, I'll give Ernest Jones all the credit in the world for the fact that he is the reigning NFC Defensive Player of the Week. He's going to have to play at that type of level again this week, just because of the fact that, again, it was such a formidable matchup with Robinson specifically. But then Algier, while you're so busy trying to prepare for Robinson's lateral agility and he's making you miss and look silly, Algier is the same kind of guy as Zach Charbonnet can be, except he's even more physical, if that's possible, and he will knock you on your backside. So as excited as we are about Drake Thomas, for example, this could be a game where his lack of size shows up a little bit because Algier will put people on their backside. So again, this is a fascinating match. I have two concerns about the Falcons: their pass rush and then their running backs. If Seattle is able to handle those two, this could very well be a runaway victory for the Seahawks. But if they are unable to slow down those two, this could wind up being an upset loss as well.
Yeah, the run game for the Falcons, that has been the thing that's really kept them in games this year, and it's allowed them to win. But those guys are also utilized a lot in the passing game. And look, we can talk about some of the receivers. I think Drake London's a really good football player. I think Atlanta's got some guys that can be complementary pieces next to him that can get the job done too. But Kyle Pitts, the touchdowns are not there, but he's actually having one of the best, if not the best years of his entire career to this point. He's almost to 60 catches and 600 receiving yards this year. Again, the touchdowns haven't been there, and I know but there's a lot of fantasy owners out there the last 3 or 4 years like, man, Kyle Pitts, what a bust. Like, I still feel like that it's just been a guy that either isn't being utilized scheme-wise right, or he's just had bad fortune, because he's still an extremely dangerous threat in the passing game, stretching the field vertically, creating after the catch. Has been inconsistent since coming out of Florida, hasn't lived up to that billing. But again, his numbers this year away from touchdowns, he's having arguably the best year of his career. And Kirk Cousins is going to utilize him more probably than what Michael Penix was using him, because he has always leaned heavily on tight ends in the passing game. So I'm looking at Nick Eamon-Warry. I'm looking at Julian Love if he's back this week, Kobe Bryant. All those guys are going to be faced with the task of trying to deal with Pitts, because this isn't a typical tight end that's going to be doing most of his damage underneath or in the intermediate. He is that guy that can win downfield and outrun safeties and even corners. Just hasn't shown it consistently, but he is the one guy that they have that truly is that field stretcher that any given time he touches the ball can turn a short or medium catch into a big play. The safeties are going to have to be on their toes, ready to go. Otherwise, Pitts is still a guy that has the talent to take over a football game.
No question about it. And we all know that Seattle has struggled to slow down opposing tight ends. I mean, that has been something that goes back to the Pete Carroll time. So this is a concerning matchup. Look, Nick Eamon-Warry is playing at such a high level, and the possibility of getting Julian Love back is only going to make an already strong safety rotation for the Seahawks that much stronger. So this is a matchup that bears watching. And as you said, there's no question about it that, the quarterback transition here, that you are going to see the tight end being used much more, now than previously with Michael Penix. So it is a troubling matchup. I do think that Seattle, especially with Eamon-Warry, his size and speed should be able to slow Pitts down. But this is the matchup in terms of the passing game that I think that Seattle has to be the most concerned about.
And last but not least, let's go back to the trenches here. And this is one that I could see potentially Atlanta being able to have a little bit of success, because the guard play there has not been bad this year necessarily. Lindstrom is a really solid starting guard in the National Football League. Matthew Bergeron is a player that has had his good games and his bad games. He's been inconsistent, but there's certainly some good tape out there. Where I'm looking at this game, though, and feeling like the Seahawks have a real chance to make things messy with Kirk Cousins. I mean, we know how good he is at getting the ball out quickly, but they still got a lot of pressure on him when they played in Atlanta last year. That was a few weeks before Michael Penix was given the keys to the offense. Cousins was still the starter at that point, had a couple fumbles, had a couple interceptions in that game. And a big part of it was the interior pressure. And look, they don't have Drew Dahlman anymore. They let him go in free agency. He's snapping to Caleb Williams with the first place 9-3 Chicago Bears right now. And so that has created some significant issues for Atlanta's offensive line trying to move forward without their multi-year starter. So I'm looking at Byron Murphy. I'm looking at Brandon Peely. You want to talk about a guy that's had some really good film the last couple of weeks. Brandon Peely's playing with a lot of confidence. And if Jaron Reed's back this week, Jaron Reed is a guy that can be a gamer that comes right in and immediately starts wrecking havoc in the middle. That is a matchup to me going up against a new starting center for the Atlanta Falcons. That is a matchup that I feel like absolutely plays into Seattle's favor, not just with their defensive line in general, but for those nose tackle bodies, the variety of different types of players they can throw at you in that regard. I think it gives Atlanta's interior a lot of problems.
It could. And as you said, the Falcons guard play has been pretty good. I am skeptical of Ryan Neuzil, and I think that's how you pronounce his name, Nuezil. But the Falcons did allow Drew Dahlman to leave via free agency, and they had some faith in Neuzil, and he's played reasonably well. But Byron Murphy II has just been on such a tear here recently. Obviously, Leonard Williams, Brennan Peely, as you said, is his power. Again, I think that it is something that Seattle should be able to overpower Nuzul in the interior of Atlanta's offensive line. That is something that Kirk Cousins has struggled with in the past. Obviously, if you are able to control the line of scrimmage, then that is going to eliminate the running holes for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier as well. So the formula for success is the same as it always is with Mike McDonald's defense. Control the line of scrimmage with the most dominant and versatile defensive line and probably in all of the NFL. And this could be the easy victory that a lot of Seahawks fans are calling for. So this, to me, is one of the key matchups in this game. It's not so much on the outside. It's very much on the inside. I think Seattle's got control of that. If they do that, everything else should be easy.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, crossover Thursday, Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons. We're going to take a deeper dive into this upcoming Week 14 matchup between the two NFC foes. Don't miss it and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Go Hawks.